My name's Anne, and I moved to Seattle in 1996. So I've been here over 20 years, and I really consider it home. I've moved here as a single person and got married here and now have two kids. So I've lived all over the city, and I've lived as just me, and I've lived as a couple, and now I've lived as a family unit in all different areas of town. When I moved to Seattle, I was obviously just me, so I kind of just focused on what I was doing, and not a lot of things bothered me about the city, so I wasn't very active politically. But as I have little people that I now have to explain kind of the ways of the world and life to, it's been a bit of a problem for me almost on a daily basis, dealing with the homelessness crisis that we have here. And I used to work downtown, and I would drive downtown, and when my first child was born, and it was, the streets were clean, and there weren't really people on the side of highways in tents or anything like that. But literally since my son has been born, he's 7, it has just grown exponentially to where we see it everywhere in almost every corner, and so we talk about it almost every day. So they're trying to understand, because they don't know why there would be people there, because they already can tell it's not safe. So the homelessness issue has been something that we talk about, and I try to educate them so that they have compassion for people first, because we don't know how they got there. But the most important part for us is we talk about we have to do something, right? And so we've watched the plan that has been enacted by the city over the last 7 to 10 years, when the homeless crisis was proclaimed to be a crisis, and that all this money was going to be put towards it. But all we've seen is that it's increased dramatically throughout the entire time, to where we've had someone chase us. My kids were like 3 and 5, about that age, and someone was intoxicated that was in the bushes. We didn't see them, and he started swearing at us, saying all kinds of words, and my children and I were really afraid. We had to run, and the man started chasing us and yelling at us, and it was quite scary, and my kids still remember it years later. I am a coach, a volunteer coach for both of my kids' teams. I've been coaching my oldest one for about 4.5, going on 5 years, and I love it. I've made that commitment to those families that I will coach as long as we have the whole team together. And so now they're old enough that we get to play in all different locations around the city. And I always connect with the coach that we're playing against to just check in before we have our game. And I've heard from some of the other coaches that there are sometimes fields that they have to make sure there's not needles in the fields where our kids are going to play. Sometimes we have to clean up trash that's around there. We have to make sure that there's no people camping. What they've been trying so far, I don't think it's been working. We've tried it for several years since the crisis on homelessness was declared, and as I mentioned, I feel like it's only exponentially grown, and it's expanded across the city, and the severity of it has increased over that time period when they proclaimed this crisis event. So I don't see where the money is actually being used. I don't see there's accountability set up. I think the most basic first step is when the city of Seattle hires national experts to give them recommendations on what to do about the homeless crisis, that the city actually listens to the report and follows through with the recommendations of how we can start to solve this. There was an expert that the city hired. She came back and did an analysis of what we were doing and not doing, and there were some basic fundamental things that she cited that the city has not chosen to enact. And so I'm not quite sure why we get an expert report if we're not going to follow the recommendations, because to me, perhaps if we had followed those recommendations, we might be seeing a lessening of this problem. But again, it's still just increasing year after year. 2 things in particular that she commented that we need to do is have accountability set up within the system, that we don't have any currently. And the other thing that she commented that is adding to the difficulty of solving the problem is the complexity of our structure. And she talked about how our governance structure is unnecessarily complex, and that we need to streamline it so that all the programs are under one department, one person, so that when there is a solution that is recommended by someone like her, that it can be implemented in a matter of weeks. That's what Houston could do. But our consensus group, that's how we govern, is consensus building, and then it takes 7 to 8 months to implement the change that the expert recommended. And so that's just too slow, and it's just unnecessary. We've created it to be more work for ourselves within the city of Seattle than it needs to be, and we brought in an expert to tell us so, and then we still haven't really followed through. It's time to get to work. Let's be productive. I'm tired of sitting around and talking about it and complaining about it and worrying about it with my kids. It's just time to be productive and move forward.